Hey guys, welcome back to the next video. In this video, we are going to talk about Docker Compose. Now, in this video, we are going to see what is Docker Compose and quickly do one short example. On the next video, we will do a complex example, but then to start with, we will start with a very quick example of understanding Docker Compose. And what is Docker Compose? Docker Compose is a tool which is separate from Docker. So when you execute the command Docker on your Linux system, right? So this command is different. Its functionality is different, and Docker Compose, on the other hand, is a different command. Now, by default, the Docker Compose command will not be installed as part of Docker. Docker is a separate tool which is actually using the same component as the Docker Compose, but Docker Compose needs to be downloaded and installed separately. Now let's understand what is Docker Compose. Docker Compose is basically for defining and running multiple containers. Now, what do you mean by that? So if you traditionally look at the previous videos on Docker, you'll be able to see we create a file called Docker file and we type in the requirement saying that I want this particular image on my container. Now, what you will be accomplishing with that is basically creating one single container with an image on it. But have you ever worked on creating multiple images in a single Docker file? I don't think we have, right? Now, Docker Compose is going to help you in that regards. Now, using Docker Compose, you will be designing and delivering multiple containers on your single execution. So with the Docker Compose, you define all services in a single YAML file. Then you kind of start everything using a single command. So this means that you can have multiple containers created and run by Docker Compose, which was previously not possible by Docker command itself or Docker file. Now do remember that we are going to use YAML file structure over here. This is going to be an introduction to Kubernetes. So if you're looking for Kubernetes, then the mastering Kubernetes and Docker is the course you want to go for. And if you are working in that terms, now this file is going to help you to step forward in Kubernetes. And do remember that this program is added later point of time after the training has been launched. So which means that this server, this particular session will be disconnected from the previous ones. So you may not find connections or, whatever we have dealt with, it won't be on the same version machine. So it is on a different version machine. I try to segregate it and put a note over there as well. Now, this is useful. The Docker Compose is useful for application that relies on multiple containers like web servers, databases, and cache servers. Now, let's talk about the Docker Compose in terms of installation first before we go ahead with anything else. To install Docker Compose, very simple. Firstly, install Docker because Docker Compose really requires the Docker fundamental items. Then you can run the sudo curl command, which is going to download it, Docker Compose from your GitHub repository, and it's going to place it on user local bin folder. Now this is going to help you in terms of executing this file. So now you have the Docker Compose in this folder. Now this is a root folder you've executed with sudo. So you need to run sudo docker compose. Okay, now this is going to give you the exact help page for the Docker Compose. Few of the almost all of the commands you will find it similar with Docker itself. Now you have your own PS over here, you have your own logs over here, you have your own kill over here. So likewise, you will find exactly the same options like you did with Docker command. But this is again separate version of it where it has this updated functionality of running multiple containers. Now you can also run multiple containers recursively on all the subfolders as well. So that's also another advantage I forgot to tell you. Okay, so this means there are a lot of possibilities here, right? So you can build an entire stack on one Docker Compose command. So that is also possible. So we will do projects. In that project, we'll be using Docker Compose and we will be understanding on that how to build an entire stack, okay, using Docker Compose. So Yeah, projects are also part of this program, which is the Docker Kubernetes Docker, mastering Docker with projects. So if you see this video on Docker mastering Docker Kubernetes, then projects won't be part of it. So that is exclusively for Docker mastering Docker training. So just that it's a common video for both the training. So that's the reason. Now that the Docker Compose is installed, so now all you have to do right now is to go ahead and work with this Docker Compose tool. Now, how we're gonna work with Docker Compose tool is basically you need to have a file like Docker file. When you wanna use Docker file, we use it to create a file having a D capital Docker file, right? So, I'm sorry, file, right? So likewise, for you to execute this, you need to have a specific file. And only if you have that file, it will understand and it will execute it automatically, because all you will be doing is like docker compose up-d for running it on the background. So when you do that command, it automatically detects the file in that location on the same path you are in, and then executes that file. So let's just understand how to create it. But firstly, we will create a folder called demo1. In this demo1 folder, we will create this docker-compose.yaml. So now this is how it understands that my instructions of executing a Docker compose is in this docker compose.yaml file. Now you can have only one file per folder. So if you're installing another software on, and you should create another folder and put it recursively inside and do refer it on this file about it. So we will talk about that on the complex one. So don't worry about it right now. So what we will do is we'll create a very quick Docker compose file. Now, as I told you, the main feature or the main characteristics of this particular file is that this file looks exactly like Kubernetes. So Kubernetes also starts with something called version, called API version. So this also starts with something called version. And Kubernetes also has services. This one also have services. And then here you can give your own custom name for your service. And then here image is Nginx. So likewise, we can import this image Nginx. And here you can give port over here. So I'm giving 80, I'm sorry, hyphen 80 colon 80. Now this is a unique identification for exporting a particular port number over here. So now I have exported this port number. Then I can create another application here. So this is where Docker Compose is different than other Docker file. So now here I'm creating another one over here called DB. Now in this DB, I can DB container, you can call it the container. In this DB container, I'm creating another image of MySQL. Now in this image, I'm giving environment variable. Did I write corrected? Just let me, I'm not sure whether I got the right spelling for it. Just give me a second. I'm sorry. Environment. And then under that, I'm giving MySQL root password. And here I'm giving example as the root password. Now, do remember that these action items can be, it's already there on your GitHub page. So you can just copy paste, you just have to copy paste the same thing on your file as well. So let me just copy paste it because of typo. All right. Now what has happened is like I'm going to have two containers, one container named app, another container named, I'm not naming it, so it's going to be autonomous, but this is going to be app and this is going to be DB. So there is no name over here of this container. So that's going to create its own name. So we don't have to give those much of details. Now this is going to be on port number 8080 and this is going to be on 3306, but I'm not specifying it. So let's see what happens. Now that you have created this particular file in this location, now all you have to do is like docker compose up. Now you can do up, but then if you put -d, it's going to run it in background. Now you can see that it is executing these three files. So when you're running it for the first time, you will be able to see that the Docker file will be actually, downloading those things. I think it's already there. That's why it was so fast. So now all I'm going to do is like sudo docker compose, and then I'm going to say that I want to list all the process and then do a ps-a. Now you can see that this are the two containers which is running over here. One is running with image of Nginx and one is running with MySQL. Now you can see that this is app service and DB service, and here you have the port numbers defined over here. Now you can see that the port number of your MySQL port number is also defined. Now this gives you the name of this particular the container. So here docker logs, and then you can understand the logs of this particular application. You can see that this is your Nginx and it has started your Nginx process, and then same thing for your DB as well, and you can see that it has started your database as well. So you can see that over here, port 3306 and yeah, likewise. So you have got this MySQL started as well. So now you have both the Nginx container and MySQL container running with Docker Compose. Now this wouldn't have been possible if you would have used Dockerfile, because you had to do one by one. So this is one way of doing it. Now to turn it off, it's just all you have to say is like Docker Compose down on that same folder. So it will detect from the same folder and it will remove those containers from running. Now if you see that there is no container running over here. This is pretty much how you need to do that. There seems to be some exception over here on the version is absolute, it says, so we don't really have to use the version number anymore in this Docker file. So let's just view this. Let's remove this. Let's see if the error goes away. Yeah, there you go. So you don't have to use version. So that's a new thing. So this is every time they updated new Docker Compose, they come with optimization. One of those optimization was to remove the version. So that's a good thing. So now we have just the service configured and the service running over here. If you have any questions, please leave it on the question section. So we have understood what is Docker Compose. We have understood how to install it, and we have done a simple Docker Compose of creating multiple containers. Thank you again for watching this video. Thanks for your patience and time. I'll see you on the next one.